Welcome back to Faithful Friday. For the first case for this week, we are going back to California because something always going down in California. This case, we are going back in time, like back, because this case happens in like 1957, so about a good 60 something years ago. So there's not a lot of information about this case, but I tried to piece it together the best I could. Sources down below as always. And so with that being said, let's go and get started. So we're actually going to start off with Goldyne. So Goldyne was said to have been born on May 19th, 1914 in Illinois, but her parents were German immigrants. So they came from Germany, but she was born in the United States in Illinois. So it doesn't say an exact year, but by 1940, she had already moved to Los Angeles from Illinois. In 1943, it is said that she graduated high school. And then it said after she graduated high school, she would get married to a man named Herbert, but they divorced some months after that. And then after that point, she had started dating women. But of course, remember, like I said, this is the 40s. So just like interracial relationships were taboo, same-sex relationships were also taboo. So she had to keep that like on the down low. So Goldyne eventually winds up being this woman named Joan Rebel. Joan was said to have been born sometime in 1917 in either Pennsylvania or in a foreign country called Lusitania. Yeah. So Joan was working for this couple named Betty and Peter Fabiano. And so we don't have a date of birth for Betty, but we have a date of birth for Peter. He was born February 7th, 1922. A little bit about Peter before we get into Joan. Peter actually served in World War II, because like I said, he was born in 1922. And we didn't get involved until he was about 19, so he was old enough to serve. He would get arrested in 1948 for bookkeeping, which apparently back then, that was like their way of saying gambling. So he got arrested for like presumably illegal gambling, and that's the only thing on his record that they had. Peter apparently was driving like a truck driver when he met Betty. And like I said, she was a single mom because she had Judy that she had from her previous marriage. They apparently get married like 1955. They wind up opening 2 beauty shops, and like I said, they needed employees to obviously keep these beauty shops running. So this is where they hired Joan, because I guess Joan had the experience. Peter introduced Joan to Betty, his wife, and of course, Joan liking women. But of course, I guess Peter didn't know this. Joan would, of course, become obsessed with Betty. So, of course, this winds up being a problem, and Betty and Peter eventually wind up splitting, and Betty leaves the house and goes to live with Joan. Eventually she does wind up missing Peter, because of course that's her husband. He's been there through like thick and thin. And so she's like, I want to go back to you. And he's like, okay, cool. I'll take you back, but you can't see Joan ever again. So she pretty much just drops Joan like she never knew her. And then of course Joan goes and calls Goldyne, which Goldyne of course obviously had feelings for Joan, but the feelings were not reciprocated. So Goldyne liked Joan, but Joan didn't like Goldyne because she wanted Betty. So she calls Goldyne, basically says that Peter is abusive and Betty needs help getting out of this abusive relationship. So then they go to a gun store on October 21st, 1957, and she would tell the person that was selling her the gun that she needed it for home protection. But however, instead of buying like a full box of bullets, like most people do, just buy like 2, which I guess back then that was like allowed, like just 2 bullets, and then just wait till Halloween, so like the 31st. On Halloween night, 1957, Joan drives to Goldyne's house, but she does not use her car. She uses a friend named Margaret's, because she's trying to leave her car at her house to make it so like she got an alibi, so she can potentially get away with this. So she borrows her friend Margaret's house, not her house, but she borrows like her car, claiming like, I gotta go to the supermarket for some shit. And of course, Margaret, I guess being the good friend she is, not knowing what Joan was actually about to do, she was like, sure. So she goes to Goldyne's house with like the costume, because it's Halloween, so we gotta wear like costumes so Peter couldn't identify who the fuck you are. So she comes over with jeans, a khaki jacket, a hat, an eye mask, because again, to cover your face, and a gun, but the gun is like in a paper bag to like hide it so he doesn't see it like at first. So they get to Peter's house around like 9 p.m. and they wait till like the lights turn off from like a distance. It doesn't say how far the distance is, it just says from a distance to where they can still see the house. So 9 p.m., that's where people like stop that's like around the last acceptable hour to stop trick-or-treating. But they wanted to wait till there was like no witnesses outside, like no kids, nothing. And so they waited till like 11 p.m. where like most people could agree that's where you should stop trick-or-treating, is like 11 p.m. Because that's where people start going to sleep, turn off lights, that's where they run out of candy, that kind of stuff. So Goldyne goes and knocks on the door. Peter, of course, is a late trick-or-treater. He, according to Betty, opens the door because Betty's still in her room and Judy's in her room. So Peter goes to open the door. He thinks, don't you think it's still a little late for this? And apparently Betty would say, like, it sounded like a man trying to sound like a woman. The voice apparently told him no. And then Goldyne, of course, shot Peter with the gun through the paper bag. So, of course, Betty hears the noise. So does Judy. They both come out. They find Peter on the ground. So Betty, of course, calls 911. However, Judy went over to the neighbor's house because the neighbors just so happen to work for the police. So if 911 don't get here quick enough, we got the neighbors who are actually police. They may be off duty, but hey, they still police, so see what they can do. After this, Goldyne and Joan drive back to Margaret's house to give her back the car, because this was Margaret's car that was used to commit this crime. They burned their clothes at some point, doesn't specify when, but the clothes they were wearing were confirmed to have been burnt later. Joan would give Goldyne a kiss before telling her, so now I need you to pretend like you never knew me, even though I just had you commit a whole ass murder for me. And then Peter, of course, because this is a murder channel, Peter, of course, does die, but he dies from blood loss. So Betty, of course, being the wife, she was interrogated, and the home was searched to see if there was any potential evidence, like clues as to who it could have been, and then no bullets were found. She would tell them that we run the 2 beauty shops, so maybe they thought we had the money here, and it could have been a potential robbery gone wrong, you know. So the police questioned family and friends, see what they potentially know. Nobody pretty much could think of who would want to hurt Peter, because apparently these were good people. Like I said, I remember I said he was charged with bookmarking back in 1948. That was the only criminal charge they had, but they were checking his criminal record to see if maybe somebody he was involved with back then, like, wanted revenge now for whatever reason. And you chose Halloween, so he wouldn't be, like, as suspicious as he would any other night. So then Betty eventually comes up with the name of Joan. Like, there was this woman named Joan that worked with us, but we fired her. Maybe we'll go look at her. The police officer go look at Joan. Joan uses somebody else's car and having a fake-ass alibi. She gets let go due to lack of evidence. About a month later, a tip comes in to look at a storage unit for the gun. Of course, they look at said storage unit. They find the gun. They look to see who it's registered under. It's registered under Goldyne. Now, Betty, they don't know who Goldyne is. They know who Joan is, but they don't know who Goldyne is. So they go check Goldyne, like, why is a murder weapon in your storage unit? Goldyne pretty much confesses right away and says that Joan had her do all this and that we've actually been planning this murder for about 3 months. So imagine, well, this being 1957 and there being such a stigma around the LGBTQ community. And actually in California, it was actually legally be gay at the time. Like, that was the actual thing. So the newspapers described the relationship as abnormal instead of just straight saying lesbian because, you know, the stigma around this at the time. It was never actually confirmed whether Betty was in on the murder, like whether she knew this was going to happen. Goldyne kept insisting that they were, but then of course, you know, Joan was out here over her lying turns, so more than likely Betty is completely innocent in this, and she was just trying to get Goldyne to kill Peter so she can get back to Betty. So they already got Goldyne in custody. They do find Joan. Joan is eventually arrested because Margaret apparently came to the police and was like, hey, my odometer's off, because she said she was going to the store, but there's like an extra like 30-something miles on here. And so yeah, Joan tried to say she was going to the store, but of course police caught her in that lie. So she gets arrested, and then she pled innocent, but Goldyne pled insanity. So both would want to get sentenced to like 5 years to life under a plea deal of second-degree murder. And it's said that Betty eventually remarried in like 1966, but I couldn't confirm whether or not that was true. In 1973, it is said that Goldyne was a member of the Miracle High chapter in a women's club. It is said that Goldyne died in 1998 at 83, whereas Betty died in 1999 at 81. Joan, on the other hand, it is believed that she was released. Otherwise, I would say she was still in jail, of course, because they did get to life. But there's no trace of her to this day. It's believed that she either had changed her name or that she's dead by now, because everybody else in the story pretty much, because like I said, 1957, everybody else in the story is pretty much dead by now. And apparently there was an obituary back in 1999 for a man that is believed to be her brother, because he listed a surviving sister as Joan, and he has the same last name as her and everything, and their last name, Rebel, is not exactly that common. So it is believed that she died in 2012 and is currently buried in California. Because again, this murder happened in California. It's not confirmed, but that's believed what happened in Jacksonville. So yeah, that's a case that happened with a female killer over Halloween. And I guess a case where one of the people involved in the murder, we don't know where they're at to this day. So let me know. Do you think Joe's still alive under a different name? Do you think she died in 2012, like I mentioned, in California? Definitely let me know your thoughts down below. If you have any more Halloween cases that involve a female, definitely let me know. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.